And we've arrived at session 7 of Unified English Braille for Vision Professionals. We are now on the second half of the course, so congratulations on making it through up to this point. From now on, we'll be talking about things beyond words and numbers, and the first thing we'll be talking about today is a little tangent of, called Braille Order, and then some general symbols. I decided to break up the list of general symbols that are in this session because otherwise it would be way too much all at once. So let's get started with Braille Order, and first some terminology. A reminder that Braille sign or a Braille symbol, the terms are interchangeable, is one or more consecutive Braille characters comprising a unit, such as a prefix with a root, like .5T means the contraction TIME. That's a root and a prefix construct. So a Braille sign or a Braille symbol is one or more consecutive Braille characters comprising a unit consisting of that root on its own, or a root and a prefix, or two, or three. Braille order is the 63 dot characters minus the space possible for a single cell. They are arranged into 7 lines, and each line has similar characteristics. And once again, we've had Braille order all along. We probably just didn't pay much attention to it. Most of us are familiar with at least Braille order in terms of the alphabet, because that's just plain alphabetizing. It also plays into this whole concept of Braille order, however. So the table is 7 lines. This first screen shows the first 3 lines. Line 1 is the characters that are possible just using the dots in the upper cell, and those are our A through J, or numbers 1 through 10, or 0, excuse me. Line 2 then adds dot 3 to those characters of line 1. So you notice that K is a dot A, a dot 1, with dot 3 added to it, and that gets our K. L is dots 1 and 2 like a B, and then we add dot 3 to get our L, and so on. Line 3 adds dots 3 and 6 to get the same characters in line 1. And so if you notice that, that's where we get our last 5 letters of the alphabet, not including the W, because that was not, W is not part of the French language, which is the language that Louis Braille spoke when he developed this, so W is not included in this line. It is, however, where we get our and for of the with characters. The next 4 lines, line 4 adds dot 6 to those same 10 characters from line 1. And that's where we get our W from, at the very end. Line 5 repeats line 1 in the lower cell, so it drops them. That's where we get our punctuation, and if you're a Nemeth person, that's where we get our Nemeth numbers from. Line 6 is the characters possible using only dots 3, 4, 5, 6, not dots 1 and 2. And there are only 6 characters possible with that configuration. Line 7 is the characters that are only in the right column of the cell, so that's where we get our prefixes from. Braille order works just like alphabetizing. You can think of the chart as one long line or work with the 7 categorical lines. So whatever is in line 1 comes before line 2. Let's go back a couple screens. So if a character starts with, say, P, that's going to come before something that starts with C. Again, that to us is just plain alphabetizing, but it plays into this whole concept of Braille order as well. Whatever is to the left in a line comes before what is to the right of that in that same line. So again, going back, obviously something that starts with B would come after something that starts with A. Or if we were to go to another line, it's something that starts with going to line 7, something that starts with a dot 5 is going to come before something that starts with a dot 6. If 2 or more multi-cell symbols start with the same Braille character, then order is determined by the second cell. Again, that's the same way alphabetizing works. If something starts with an A, say academic, that's and then we have another word that starts with AA, like aardvark. Aardvark is going to come before academic. If the second cell is also the same, then the order is determined by the third cell. Again, that's just the principles of alphabetizing. So in section 3, we have the Braille symbols there are listed in Braille order. So in the list that's in section 3, for instance, the shape indicator with dots 1, 2, 4, 6 is going to come before the arrow indicator, which is dots 1, 2, 5, 6. But the rules themselves, the explanation of those symbols, is in alphabetical order, according to the names of the symbols. So in that case, it's flipped. Arrows discussion is going to come before the discussion on shapes. So I just want you to be aware of that, so when you're looking things up in section 3, you understand how things are arranged. So Appendix 3, there are 3 appendices in the UEB rulebook. We've talked already about Appendixes 1 and 2. Appendix 1 is the short forms list. Appendix 2 is all of the words that were demonstrated in section 10, which dealt with contractions. Appendix 3 then lists all the symbols of UEB, including the alphabet, everything, punctuation, type form indicators, everything. They're all listed in Braille order. So while this whole concept of Braille order is not crucial to understanding the code necessarily, it will help you tremendously when looking things up. It will also help your Braille readers to know how to find things on the special symbols page or when symbols are listed. So, for instance, if you know something starts with a prefix, any prefix, you know that's going to come towards the end of the whole list, because that's in line 7. So you can skip everything that's in lines 1 through 6. If you know something starts with a W, you know it's not going to come after V, because that's not how the Braille order configuration works. So it can just kind of save you some time. It's not again, it's not, vitally important to understanding the code, but it can just help you understand how to find things when you need to look things up. So go ahead and just give the Braille order a try. It's just a little exercise. You might want to stop the video now and get this out of the way before we move on to the symbols. Okay, moving on to the symbols then, we have a whole list of general symbols and indicators. This is all in section 3, and the list spans 2 whole print pages. Most of these symbols are new or changed, although some are the same. So let's just do a quick rundown of the symbols, and then we'll talk about each of these a little bit more in depth later on. First of all, as I said, these are in alphabetical order, so our first symbol is ampersand, and that is a dot 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. That we've had all along, and we are going to continue using that. That's a relief. Then we have something called arrow mode, which we will be talking about in another session. And arrows all start with the dot configuration 1, 2, 5, 6. And then some other arrows pointing to the right, pointing down, pointing to the left, and pointing up. The asterisk has changed, is now dot 5, dots 3, 5. And we will use that no matter what, no matter where, just like we have been using everything else, like the period. The dagger has changed, and also the double dagger. We have something called Braille grouping indicators. I've touched on those a bit in an earlier session. We'll be talking about those. The bullet is dots 1, 2, 3, 2, 5, 6. That has stayed the same since 2011. The caret has changed. The commercial @ sign is the same. Copyright, register, and trademark signs are the same. Then we have something UB calls crosses. You'll notice the first one is just like a dagger, because a dagger can also be called a cross. And then we have just the letter X, lowercase, capital X, and then a multiplication cross. Currency signs include the cent, the euro, the franc, the pound, the naira, and our new dollar sign is a .4S, and the yen, .4Y. Degrees has a new symbol, that's 4-5, and then 2-4-5. So no more using the DG to mean degrees. We have an actual symbol for that. Minutes, depending on the print, whether the little mark is going straight up and down or is slanted. We have two different symbols for that. The first one there, dots 2, 3, 5, 6, shows minutes as if the print character is slanted, and or just the apostrophe if it is not. And same for seconds. We have a symbol for if they're slanted and if they're not. We'll be talking about that later. Ditto mark is dots 5 and then 2. That has stayed the same. We have a new concept called dot locator, and there are two different types of those. Dot locator for mention, dot locator for use. Braille readers taking this course will have already been introduced to the dot locator for mention because I used that in the transcription. Then we have feet and inches. You'll notice those are the same symbols for minutes and seconds because they're the same in print, so they are the same in Braille. Believe it or not, we actually have symbols for the female and male signs. Sometimes they're called Venus and Mars. We have some symbols for mathematical signs: plus, equals, multiplication, division, minus, ratio, proportion, less than, and greater than. Those have all changed from EBAE. We have some characters or symbols for music accidentals. These are not what you would use in music code. These are what you would be if you're still in UEB. But we have symbols for the natural, flat, and sharp symbols. The number sign, which in various contexts in print we call it either a crosshatch or a hash or a pound sign. That is all the same print symbol, so it's all the same Braille symbol. And that has not changed since 2011. Dots 456 and then 1456. Paragraph and section signs have changed. The percent sign has changed now. It's now 2 cells, dots 46 and then 356. We're not using dots 46 for decimal point anymore, so that frees it up to be able to use it with the percent sign. Shapes is its own mode in UEB. We'll be talking about that later on. Space is a space. We have a symbol for, well, indicator for subscript and superscript now. That's 2, 6 for subscript and dots 3, 5 for superscript. The tilde has changed. Sometimes we call it a swung dash. This is not the tilde that you see above letters in foreign language. This is on the same line as the regular text used in various contexts. So for this, we use dot 4 and then 3, 5. If we need some other symbol besides all those I just mentioned, then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different transcriber-defined symbols that we can use, and those must be used in order. We can't just pick which one we like best, so we start at the left here and then work our way to the right. And then we have transcribers note indicators, which I have introduced in a previous session. So all those symbols that were listed in section 3 that represent print symbols follow print for usage and spacing. We Braille what we see. A few of them, though, have an additional note or two in the rules for clarification, and that's what we'll be going over in this session and in the next. A bit of definition here. Indicators, if I have not said already, are not present in print. So an indicator is not present in print. A symbol or a sign is. So indicators such as an arrow mode indicator, a dot locator, Braille grouping indicators, shape indicators, and transcribers note indicators, none of those things are in print. They tell the Braille reader that something else is coming up in the next cell, but they aren't there in print. Okay, let's get into it with our actual discussion of each symbol now. So going back to the beginning, ampersand. As I said, we Braille what we see. It's spaced as it is in print. If we see an ampersand ampersand, we Braille and ampersand. If they see the word A-N-D, then we're going to just use the contraction for A-N-D. So Marks and Spencer with an ampersand that has spaces on either side, so that's what we do in Braille. AT&T does not have spaces in it. It's part of the name, so we Braille what we see. We have a capital word indicator for AT, and then the ampersand, which terminates the capital word mode because it's not a letter. And then we have to start up capital again with the capital T. Okay, arrows. As I said, the arrow mode starts with dots 1, 2, 5, 6. All arrows start with that indicator. And then we have 4 different just normal arrows pointing to the right, down, left, and up. So those are actually arrow mode terminators. They don't represent the actual arrowhead. That's a little bit confusing, but that's kind of a concept that UEB went with. So these are actually 2 different indicators. One saying arrow mode has started, and then which direction the arrow is pointing. So for the first one there, we have the right pointing arrow or an east pointing arrow if you're working with a compass or O&M. Then we have down pointing arrow with dots 1, 4, 6. Left pointing arrow, and then up arrow is dots 3, 4, 6. We follow print for the use of arrows. You list the complete arrow symbol without any grade 1 indicator and its meaning on the symbols page or in a transcriber's note. The grade 1 indicator may be required before the arrow symbol to avoid it being misread. And I will just tell you that most of the time you will need a grade 1 indicator in front of your arrow mode because it does look just like the contraction for OU. So to prevent that from being read as a contraction, we put the grade 1 indicator there to say that it is an indicator, and in this case, an arrow mode indicator. A couple of examples. Road signs with an actual right pointing arrow and an actual left pointing arrow mark detours. So we would use this in context. We have a grade 1 indicator to prevent that arrow mode indicator from being read as a contraction. So we have grade 1 mode indicator, arrow mode indicator, and then the right pointing arrow mode indicator there. And the same thing with the left arrow. We have the grade 1 mode indicator, arrow mode indicator, and then the indicator that marks a left pointing arrow. The rule with UEB is that regular arrows with just a little barb on the end and a regular medium-sized shaft, those are implied. So all we're doing is saying there's an arrow and it points to the right or the left. Put an up arrow on the map to indicate north. We have an actual up arrow there. So we have a grade 1 indicator there, arrow mode indicator, and up arrow mode indicator there. Arrows are further discussed in technical material, which we'll be talking about in a later session. It's in section 11.6 in the rulebook, and also the volume called Unified English Braille Guidelines for Technical Material, section 13. Actually, they call it a part in technical material, part 13, for more arrows and guidelines. So remember that there is another volume to the UEB code. There's the rulebook that we've been looking at extensively up throughout this course to this point. There's also the other volume that deals with technical material that we don't want to completely ignore, even if we're done with users. That's still part of the UEB code. So there are some things in there, such as arrows, that you will want to take a look at. That volume, Guidelines for Technical Material, can be downloaded. You can print it out if you like or emboss it in hard copy from the BANO website, brailleauthority.org. Scroll down to where you see the section UEB Rules and Guidelines, and you'll see the link there. Our next symbol is actually a group of symbols, the asterisk, dagger, and double dagger. The asterisk is, again, dot 5 and then 3, 5. The dagger is 3 cells, and it's dot 4 and then dot 6 and then 1, 4, 5, 6. The double dagger is 3 cells as well. It is dot 4 and then dot 6 and then dots 1, 2, 4, 5, 6. We follow print regardless of what those mean. So wherever we see an asterisk, we're going to Braille an asterisk. It doesn't look like anything else like it did in EBAE, so we have quite a bit of flexibility with this asterisk. I thought it was actually pretty cool how we could use it in places we never could before, and it still is very clear in UEB. If these symbols appear raised from the baseline in print, which they usually are, they're still not considered to be in the superscript position in UEB, and that's important because I have mentioned there are indicators for superscript and subscript in the UEB code, but we're not going to use those when it comes to asterisks, daggers, and double daggers. So as far as an asterisk is concerned, like I said, we can use that wherever we see it, and it doesn't interfere with anything. So the good old television show MASH has asterisk in between each of its letters, so we can put that in where we see it in print, and it reads just very clearly. Words marked with an asterisk can stand all by itself. We might use it as star on a keypad, star 98 on your telephone. There's no space there in print, so there's no space in Braille. Or it might be used as a multiplication sign, speed asterisk time equals distance, and we can still use it there. So no matter what the context is, or whether there's a space or not, we can use the asterisk, and it can't be misread for anything, so it doesn't interfere with anything. So that way we can use it for emphasis. You know, if a teacher says there's an exam next week or something like that, we can put in all the asterisks just like we see it in print. So Braille readers are going to be seeing a lot more asterisks than they did before. We can use it in swearing or omitted letters, especially when you have a bunch of different symbols. You just Braille each symbol the way you see it. We've been struggling with that quite a bit in EBAE, but we won't need to do that anymore with UEB because we just Braille the symbols just as they are. And also if we have ratings, you know, 5-star, 4-star hotel, or what have you, we can put in the asterisk as many as we need. Again, we follow print spacing. In EBAE, we always had to have spaces around it because otherwise it can be confused with something else. But in UEB, we don't need to do that. So we just Braille it exactly when and where we see it. Also, you see there in this first example on this screen, we're using a dagger. So we Braille the dagger right where we did. Again, we used to have to Braille the dagger outside of that closing parenthesis, but not anymore. We just Braille it where we see it. Or if we have Reverend Robert Lowen, that might mean that he's a clergy member, and so we Braille that the same way we would as a reference indicator. It doesn't matter how it's used, a dagger is a dagger, and we Braille it just the way we see it. Or if we have 3 centered asterisks, say in a novel, it shows a break of scenery, we will use the asterisks spaced as they are in print, centered, and no blank line before or after. So again, no matter how it's used, an asterisk is an asterisk, a dagger is a dagger. Okay, moving on to Braille grouping indicators. We've seen these before as roots to other grouping symbols that are actually there in print, parentheses, brackets, braces, what have you. But these Braille grouping indicators are indicators, so they are not present in print. We use these when the preceding Braille symbol or indicator applies to all the symbols enclosed within those indicators, rather than just to the symbol immediately following some other indicator. We'll be talking about those in a later session. A bullet. We've had this bullet since 2011, I believe, so this 456 and then 256. This symbol is for the true bullet only. In EBAE, we used this symbol to mean the first level of an indented list. But in UEB, it isn't about levels, it's about symbols. So this bullet symbol is used only for the filled-in circle bullet that we see usually in a bulleted list. If there are any other shapes that are used for bullets, then we braille them as the shapes they actually are. So again, in UEB, it's all about the shapes, no matter what level they're at. In the old code, EBAE, it was about the level, didn't matter what symbol it was. So once again, UEB is staying truer to print than we ever have before. We'll talk about shapes later. For now, this is the bullet, and we will use it only for the actual bullet symbol that's used in print. A caret is a caret. It's not the circumflex mark that is above letters. This is the insertion caret, or sometimes it's used for superscript indication. So in a sentence, my favorite pets are my dog. If there's a word missing there, it's indicated with a caret, or my cat. So that caret is just stuck in where we see it in print. There are spaces on either side because that's how it is in print, and we carry on with the rest of the sentence. Sometimes in lieu of superscripts, we will use a caret to indicate that something is in superscript position. So if we have 4 squared feet, and the 2 is not in superscript position, we'll show that it's supposed to be in superscript position with a caret. And so again, we would braille exactly what we see in Braille. Notice that that numeric indicator does need to be there. Then we have the commercial @ sign. That's the same as it has been for some time now. It's dots 4 and then the letter A. We're using that same symbol for email addresses or wherever we'll see it. We'll talk about email addresses later. So if it's in a sentence, sell the candies at 10 cents each, that's the symbol for the @ sign. So the Braille just follows print, dot 4 and the letter A. Copyright, registered, and trademark. We have these symbols since, I believe, 2000. No, I think we've had it before then, maybe 2006 or something like that, 2007. Copyright, registered, trademark. We braille them however we see them. In UEB, the point is made that, again, these are not to be considered in superscript position, even if they are in print. They're just brailled right after the word that they come after, and if there's a space there, then we braille it with a space. For instance, if we saw copyright and then the copyright symbol, 2009, spaces on either side of that copyright symbol, that's what we braille in Braille. So, or if we see it unspaced from a year, then we don't space it in Braille either. If you have quick text trademark from Intuit Registered Canada Limited, that's where we see it's not considered in superscript position. We just braille quick tax, immediately braille the symbol for trademark, and then we have Intuit and immediately braille the symbol for registered. And we'll talk about crosses now. I think this is the last symbol of this video. Again, we have the dagger, regular X, a capital X, or multiplication cross. So any 2 lines that cross each other is considered a cross in UEB. We follow print to determine the symbol and the spacing. So if we have with love and then we show kisses and hugs with X's and O's, that's what we do in Braille. Sealed with a kiss, but that kiss is represented with a capital X, that's what we do in Braille. Remember to use that grade 1 indicator there so it's not read as the word it. Illiterate people signed their name with an X, same thing, it's a capital X, so that's what we Braille. And then we have 4x4 vehicle. That is using just a regular X. You can see it's at the same level as the 4s. It's a little bit taller than it is wide. I know this is kind of nitpicky, but so it is. So 4x4 vehicle, we used to Braille the word by. We're not doing that anymore. We're brailing exactly what we see, which is true to the principles of UEB. We do not need a grade 1 indicator after before the X because it can't be misread as a number. But we need a numeric mode indicator to start up that second 4 there because we've broken numeric modes. So we have numeric mode indicator 4, just regular X, numeric mode indicator, and 4, and then the word vehicle. The next example, though, that's using a multiplication cross. If it was just using an X, we would Braille an X. But in this example, it's using a multiplication cross, a 2x4 board. So that's exactly what we Braille when we transcribe. So we have 15 by 15 by 20 centimeters. Those are all multiplication crosses. You notice they're a little bit higher than the baseline of the numbers, and they're almost as wide as they are tall. So we Braille that with multiplication crosses. And no spaces because there aren't any spaces in print. The room is 12 feet by 16 feet. We see a multiplication cross there, so that's what we Braille. There are spaces on either side, and that's what we show in Braille. A 10x lens, I see this a lot on teachers' worksheets. They're just doing X when they really should be using a multiplication cross, but who's going to look up a multiplication cross when you're in a hurry, right? So just 10x lens, so that's exactly what we do in Braille. Again, no grade 1 indicator needed there because X can't be mistaken for anything, for a numeral. But if we have breeds of dogs, horses, whatever, flowers, Labrador crossed with a poodle, it's a multiplication cross, so that's what we Braille. And there are spaces on either side, so that is also reflected in Braille. So we'll stop there with the symbols. We'll carry on in the next session. We'll finish them up. But for now, see what you can do with session 7, and I will see you back for part 2 of general symbols in session 8. Thank you.